Alright guys, welcome to our tutorial for the month of December. In this one, we're going to be talking about basic head anatomy. So with this video, what I want to show you guys is the way that I construct the human head, the way I structure it, the way I put it together, and how I make sure all of my characters look anatomically correct, despite maybe stylization here and there. So we're not going to focus too much on rendering here, but instead I want to teach you guys the shapes, the measurements, the drawing process, and provide you guys with some skills that you can then translate over to your illustrations, your character designs, your paintings, whatever it is that you're drawing. All right, so with that being said, this should be a really good tutorial. Let's get into the topic. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys some skull images and do some breakdowns, okay? Because this is the foundation of the human head. Everything that you see on top here is the way it is because of the structure of the human skull. And more specifically, there are two shapes that are super important. Let's start off with the cranium, okay? This is this big egg shape right here that holds the brain in your head. And you can see in the front view, it looks more circular, whereas in the side view, it's more of an oval. So the cranium is a huge component. The second huge component is this piece right here, the jaw, the chin, and the front of the face. The shape of it is not as apparent in the front view, but as we move to the side view, you can see you really get a good look at this kind of wedge shape that comes out the front of the skull. Now, if I turn off the original, what you're gonna get is the basic fundamental components of a human head. This right here is what makes everything else possible. And please excuse my lighting, guys. The sun just keeps coming in and out of the clouds. Can't really do anything about that. Now, back to the skulls. Some more important components to consider here are two lines, okay? Two lines. One is the center line of the face. This line marks the midpoint of the face. Now, I'm gonna give you guys a quick demonstration, but if you look at this wire here, this marks the center line of my face, okay? Now, if I turn my head a little bit, you can see the center line now moves closer to the edge of my face. But this center line is really important in telling you the angle of the head. And it's also a super important reference point for all the facial features we're gonna be adding later on in this video. That's line number one. You've probably heard of this one, but there is a second one that is equally as important. So if you look at this profile view here of this skull, now this oval shape when viewed from the side also has a center line. This is what I'm just gonna call the profile center line, okay? Just to make it simple, this here is the center line, this is the profile center line. Now, why is the profile center line important? Because it shows us where the jaw is gonna start. So right here you can see the jaw begins right in front of the profile center line. So if you're ever drawing a character from a profile view or a 3/4 view maybe, finding that jawline and where it starts in relation to the cranium is super important. You need to get that right in order to get the perspective to read properly to the viewer. Okay, so far, two shapes, the cranium and the wedge shape at the front for the face, and two measurements, the center line that is at the front of the face and the center line at the profile of the face. Pretty simple. And here I've taken some more pictures for you guys to really show you the three-dimensionality of the cranium shape here. It's really built like an egg. It's nice and round and three-dimensional. And this thing right here holds your brain. It doesn't matter what expression you're making, what angle your head is facing. This never changes. That cranium, that oval shape is always gonna be there. So if you feel like you have a hard time kind of wrapping your head around this shape, no pun intended, here's an example of how you could kind of practice this shape. So think of a direction that the oval is facing, okay? Draw that oval, draw the center line, and then wrap it around the other side. And then draw the profile center line and wrap it around the other side. Look at that. Now we have a three-dimensional shape, right? So just think about which direction this oval is facing. Maybe it's facing us. Well, now there's a center line, and the other center line is not even visible. If you're not comfortable understanding the shape, just try to do some practice like this. Some very simple practice. Something else I forgot to mention earlier, but it's kind of cool, is if you look at the jaw here, it really wraps around. You see that? It's not just like a solid shape, but if you look at it from the bottom, it like wraps around. And there's the mouth, the nose, the front of the face, you know, the ears, you might get the eyes up there. From different perspectives, the jaw looks very different. So just something cool that I wanted to mention. So with what we've covered so far, I think we can start doing our first exercise, and that is practicing the shapes of the human head. Right here, I'm gonna show you a really good exercise if you wanna just practice these foundational structural shapes, okay? So let's draw an oval, and here is the center line on this oval, okay? And it's gonna wrap around to the other side just so we get some three-dimensionality here. This is gonna be our oval shape. Now I'm gonna find the profile center line, which is gonna come down the side of this oval. It's gonna wrap around to the other side and then come back onto the side that is facing us. Now to add on top of this, we're going to extend the center line down and then the other edge down with it to the point, which is going to be the chin. And then from this point right here, from the profile center line, we're going to come down, come to a point that's going to be the jaw. It's going to be that part right there, and it's going to come and join the tip of the chin. This is the base structure of a human head. If you want to get some practice in, this is a really good way to do it. Okay, you could draw one from closer to maybe the front, right? There's the center line. It's going to wrap around the back, and once you extend it, it comes to a point at the chin, and then you can find the profile center line. It's going to be something like that. We're just going to extend this side down, and once you have the profile center line, you can extend it down to the jaw, comes to a point, and it rounds out to the chin. Okay, so this right here is a great exercise to get familiar with these shapes. So if you're not super comfortable with it, feel free to try this out. Now we're gonna talk about the steps that we're gonna take to turn this basic shape into a portrait. There are some key measurements and some key points of reference here that we're gonna have to go over in order to be able to draw the face accurately. But once you get some practice in and you start to really understand it, it's gonna come to you very easily. Eventually, you won't even have to lay down these construction lines, and you could just think about it in the back of your head. That's pretty much what I do. That's why you don't see me use any construction lines in my drawings, because I'm just going through the process in my head. I don't have to put it on paper. And with enough time, enough patience, enough practice, you're gonna get there too. So now let's do our first image breakdown, and then we're gonna get into the illustrations. First thing I want you guys to look for when you're looking at a reference photo or a portrait is try to find that shape of the cranium. And remember, hair adds a lot of volume to the shape of the head. And hair can often be really deceiving. You know, it covers up the actual volume of the head and it makes you think that it's a different shape than it actually is. For example, my hair. If I were bald, it wouldn't really look like this. So we have to do something called seeing through the hair. Try to get your X-ray vision out and try to look through that layer, that volume of hair. That's what I'm doing here. I'm looking for this cranium shape underneath all that volume of hair, and I think I've got a pretty good grasp on it. Second thing we're gonna look for is the center line. So this is the direction that she is facing, right? The center line is gonna run right down, right in between the middle of the eyebrows, right down the center of the nose ridge, and all the way down to the middle of the chin. So turning the reference off here, you can see having the center line can kind of tell us what direction the face is facing. Now let's look for this wedge shape for the front of the face. So you see her jaw is going to extend down from the profile center line, and it's going to come to a point right there and taper into the chin. Same thing with the other side. It's going to come down to a point and then taper into the chin. Now if I turn the reference off, there's that familiar shape of the human head. You can see that, like we've said before, because she is facing us, this cranium is in more of a circular shape as opposed to an oval shape. And once we have this, what do we do next? And for me personally, I think the easiest thing, the simplest thing to do after this stage is to look for the eye line. The eye line, if you guys don't know, refers to the line between your two eyes. So this right here is going to be my eye line, and it wraps around the front of the face. So if you look up, the eye line curves upwards. If you look down, the eye line is going to curve downwards. In this case, she's looking straight on, so the eye line is going to be relatively flat. Now, let's say we weren't doing a breakdown for this reference. How do we find where the eye line is? It's actually super simple. There is actually one key measurement that's going to tell you where the eye line is. So from the top of the head, like the highest point on your head, and that's going to be like this point right here, down to the chin, which is the lowest point on the head. For most people, the eye line is actually going to be right in the middle between the top highest point on the head and the lowest point on the chin. Obviously, it's going to differ from person to person. Everybody's built differently. For example, I think mine are a little bit higher than midway because I have a very long face, but generally this is a really good way to find the eye line. So if I actually turn on the original here, you can see this line basically coincides with the two eyes. We did this by just looking for the halfway point between the top and the bottom. We didn't even draw this over a reference. The measurements, the anatomical structure for the face just happened to line up this way. Now, once you have that eye line, everything else becomes super easy to find. So usually the eyebrow is about like 1/2 inch to 1 inch above the eye. Draw that line in. So now you've got the brow line. And once you have the brow line, you can follow some very basic measurements to find everything else on the face. So what we know is for most people, the face is divided into 3 equal parts. There's a distance between your hairline and your eyebrow, that's the forehead. There's a distance between your eyebrow and the bottom of the nose, that's your nose section. And there's a distance between the bottom of your nose to the bottom of your chin. So these 3 are usually 3 equal parts. You're gonna get slight variations from person to person. That's just the nature of humans. So knowing this, what we can do is, here is the brow line, and if we follow the center line down, the halfway point between the brow line and the chin is where the nose is gonna end. And now if I turn on the original layer here, you can see the point that we've just drawn basically coincides with the bottom of the nose. We didn't even draw that over the reference. We just used basic measurements. Same thing here is gonna go for the forehead. So take this distance, take this length, and add it to the top of the head. Just kind of roughly map that out right there. And if we turn on the reference, you can see, boom, that coincides with the hairline. This is really the basic fundamental anatomical information you need to know about the human head. Now, as we start to get into the features, there are also some other things that you want to keep in mind. For example, the features are all going to be on the front plane of the face. You never want an eye to start sliding to the side. Now, how do you determine what is the front plane of the face? I'm going to use this old piece as an example here. So let's say we found the eye line and it's right about there. That's the eye line. One thing that I like to do to figure out the front plane versus the side planes of the face, without overcomplicating things, is just drawing a curve from this eye line down to the point on the chin. So this outermost point on the chin, and then on the other side as well, but you're not really gonna see that. So basically everything here on this side are going to be part of the side plane. You're going to be able to also map out the temple region, which is on the side, so you can really isolate the shape of the forehead. You're going to see this a lot more as we get into the actual examples, but here, same thing. I'm going to draw a curved line from right there down to the point on the chin, and that's going to give me a separation between the side plane and the front plane of the face. So following that same logic, I'm going to follow the eye line back, draw a curved line that starts from the profile center line, and it's going to just curve down to the point of the chin, and that's going to separate the sides and the front of the face. Now I can start adding features. So remember, for the most part, we're all symmetrical along the center line, and everything that you draw, all the features that you draw, should be in reference to the center line. So for example, the eyebrows here are going to be in reference to the center line. They're going to be on the front of the face, and then you're going to get the eyes. Remember, the distance between the eyes should be about the length of one eye. So once you measure that out, the nose is kind of like a wedge shape, it kind of looks something like that. And you can see the ridge usually connects to the eyebrow and it comes back down. So just add a little wedge shape there, get the bottom. And the mouth, again, on most people, is going to be just above the halfway point between the nose and the chin. And that right there should be where the slit of the mouth is. And you can add, some shading for the lips and all that. As you come to the side of the eyebrow, where the eyebrow tapers down, this is where the forehead kind of transitions to the side plane of the face. And we also cannot forget about the ears. Usually if you draw a line back from the eye line, that is where the ear is going to start, and it's gonna come down, and same thing on the other side. So there's a breakdown of the overall structures of the face. And I like to always separate the planes that are facing downwards and the planes that are facing upwards. So for example, the section under the eyebrow and above the eye is a plane that's facing downwards. The bottom side of the nose is facing downwards. The lip, the upper lip, is facing downwards. And this section right here under the bottom lip is also facing downwards. So with just a little bit of shading, you can get the three-dimensional feel for the face. And if you want, you could even go and separate the side planes of the face from the front planes of the face. But this is really the basic structure for the human head. And our piece here looks nothing like the reference, but that's okay. We were just doing a breakdown. Now let's get into the illustrations. So just to recap, the basic components of the human head. Okay, there's an oval. We're gonna look for the center line to this shape. We're gonna find the chin. We're gonna draw the side down, and then we're gonna find the profile center line, okay? And that's where the jaw is gonna start, and the jaw will connect down to the chin, and there you have the back of the head. And from this point forward, find the top of the head, the bottom of the chin. The halfway point between them is gonna be the eye line. I'm just gonna place that right there. Once you have the eye line, draw a little curve down to the outermost point on the chin, and that's going to give you the front plane of the face. About 1 to half an inch above the eye line is where we're gonna find the brow line. Once we have the brow line, we can divide the distance between the brow line and the chin into 2 halves, and that's gonna give us the bottom of the nose. So this is where the nose is gonna end, and we're gonna take this same distance, move it up. That's where the hairline is gonna start. Okay, so once you have these basic measurements, we can start adding in the eyebrows. We can start adding in the eyes. Make sure that they are symmetrical along this center line right here, and make sure the distance in between the eyes is about the length of one single eye. The eye that's further from you is gonna look a little bit more squished because of the curved nature of the front of the face. Coming down from the inside of the eyebrow is gonna be the nose ridge. It's gonna come out into a point, and it's gonna end at this line right here where we've marked down the halfway point between the brow and the chin. And the mouth will be just a little bit above the halfway point between the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the chin. Add in a cute little ear, maybe give our character a neck. And after this point, all that's left is just refinement. So based on whatever reference that you chose or whatever character you're trying to draw, you know, just make sure that they look more refined. The silhouette is what you want it to be. You know, give your character some hair so that they're not bald. You're gonna make sure the wedge shape of the nose really comes through here for you guys so you can see what I mean here. The nose separates the 2 halves of the face. And then from this outer point of the eyebrow, let's draw a line up. That's gonna give us our temple region. And here's gonna be the hairline. We can start to separate the planes on the front of the face. So this part is facing down. The nose is facing down. The upper lip is gonna be facing down. And the bottom of the bottom lip is going to be facing down, along with this edge at the bottom of the jaw, and give it a little bit of a cast shadow, a little bit of shadow on the ear too, maybe a little bit of a shadow on the cheek. So these are the steps that you want to follow. And in the next section, we're going to do some studies based on references so you guys can see this method in action, okay? So the first one we're going to do is very simple. It's going to be a front view portrait. Now, the first thing we're going to look for are the shapes. So we're going to find that round shape for the cranium. We're gonna find this center line here. And because she's facing us directly, this center line is gonna be right in the middle of this round shape. Let's find the tip of the chin. And because the profile center lines are not entirely visible because they are on the side here, we're just gonna draw the jawline down from that point right there. And creating that point on the jaw, and then connecting it back to the tip of the chin. Very simple so far, and you can start adding in the angle of the neck, the angle of the shoulders here. And at this point, we have a good grasp of the shapes. So that's step number 1, setting down the shapes. Number 2, what we want to do is find the measurements. The first thing we're going to look for is the eye line. So from the top of the head down to the bottom of the chin, the halfway point between these 2 marks is where the eye line is going to be. So I'm going to mark that down as my eye line, and about half an inch to an inch above that is where we're going to have the brow line. This is where the eyebrows are going to sit. So I'm going to mark that down right there. Once we have our brow line, super easy to find everything else. The halfway point between the brow line and the bottom of the chin, that is where the nose is going to come to an end. So I'm going to mark that down. That is the bottom of the nose. And let's take this same distance here and apply it up here, and that is going to give us our hairline. And these are some very fundamental anatomical structures and measurements that you want to know when you're drawing portraits. It's always going to come in handy no matter what. Now I'm feeling pretty good about these vertical measurements, so I can start to kind of isolate the front side of the face. So I'm going to draw a curve from that eye line down to the point of the chin here, and that's going to give me the front plane of the face. And similar to this, I'm going to draw another curve up to isolate the forehead region for the front of the face. And now for the fun part, now is where we're going to add our facial features. So let's start with the eyebrows here with the downward curve, and then we're going to come in here and add in the main body of the eyebrow. And remember to reference this center line. So the eyebrow on the other side should start at the same distance away from the center line as the eyebrow on the left side there. So just like that. Now nobody's face is completely symmetrical, but there is a very, very high level of symmetry in human faces. Okay, so you want to keep that in mind. Now what we're going to do is we're going to follow this eye line, okay, and draw the eyes onto our eye line. And remember, the distance between the eyes is the length of one single eye. So that means this will be 3 equal distances apart. And I'm going to just add in an iris right there. Another one right there. Just keep it very simple for now because we're not trying to, you know, get this thing super polished, okay? Bottom lid right there. Now we have the eyes, now we have the eyebrows. I'm gonna keep moving down, so I'm gonna draw in this nose bridge right here that connects to the inside of the eyebrow, and it's gonna come down in a bit of a wedge shape that's gonna end in like a triangle shape down there. And at the bottom of the nose, we're gonna get the nostrils. And remember guys, none of these measurements are set in stone. If you are working on a piece like this, or if you're following along and you realize that one of your measurements might not be completely right, it's totally fine to change it along the way because it's very hard to get things right on the first go. So don't be a slave to your measurements, but instead, you know, allow yourself to change things as you see. All right, so I just did a little bit more refining here, but as we keep moving down, we get to the mouth. Now the mouth is going to be just above the halfway point between the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the chin. So just above the halfway point, about right there. That's gonna be the opening of the mouth. And it's getting very dark now, but I'm pretty happy with this. We're gonna follow this eye line all the way to the side, and that is going to be the starting point of our character's ears. So right about there. All right, cool. So there's our big chunk of a second stage, which is measuring things out, figuring out where things are gonna go. And the third stage, and I think the most fun stage, is refinement. Now we're gonna make this portrait look a little bit more presentable. So this is gonna involve drawing the hair, you know, working on the silhouette of the face, and maybe tweaking things here and there that might not look completely 100% correct. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start working on the outline of the face a little bit because we haven't really paid too much attention to that. So I'm gonna just refine this jawline here. Now, my portrait is not going to look one-to-one with the reference photo because I have a natural tendency to stylize these days, and I cannot control my urge. But you know, it gets the job done. So up here, since we've already established the hairline, we can just follow that point right there, draw that down, right? Just like that. Follow this point down, just like that. Now we can add some volume to the hair. So at this point, you can kind of turn off your X-ray vision and just draw exactly what you see in the reference. And we can start to erase some of these construction lines that we don't really need, just to make this piece a little bit less cluttered. I think overall, I've made the proportions a little bit squished, so I'm just gonna lengthen that a bit. And I think that looks a bit better. And if you see anything that's slightly off here and there, feel free to go in with like a liquify tool and just play around with it. This is the refinement stage. I personally love this stage because this allows me to just work on some of the smaller details with everything already set in place. So there you go, you know, some very small fixes here and there. And if you're feeling a little bit adventurous, you can take the sketch and render it. So I'm gonna just do a very, very simple one here. I'm gonna just color in the hair, and then I'm gonna separate the different planes on the front of the face. So you can see that shadow along the side plane of the face. I'm just gonna follow that right there, down there, and then a bit more of a shadow on the neck too. Just like that. Immediately a little bit more three-dimensionality to the face. And because there is a plane that is facing downwards here, I'm gonna add a little bit of shadow right there. And you can erase the areas that are not nearly as dark There's going to be a shadow on this side of the wedge shape that is the nose, and a little bit more shadow on the bottom of the nose. And the lips are really interesting because the top lip is going to be facing down, bottom lip is going to be facing up, and this part right here under the bottom lip is going to be facing down. So we're going to add a little shadow right there, and now you can see our sketch is looking pretty good. I'm going to put this ear in shadow too, just so it doesn't confuse anybody. Right there, just like that, we have a front view portrait. We're gonna do the same thing with the next two. This one is a 3/4 view, but we're gonna do the same thing here. We're gonna find that big shape of the cranium. We're gonna find the center line down, and then we're gonna find the profile center line right there, okay? And from that point, I'm gonna draw the jawline, connect it down to the chin, and here is the front side of the face. Very, very simple stuff, okay? So now we have basically the shapes down for this portrait. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start looking for the measurements from the top to the chin. Halfway through is where the eye line is gonna be. And a little bit above that is gonna be the brow line. And once we have this eye line, I'm just gonna draw a curve down to the outer point of the chin. That's gonna give me a separation between the side of the face and the front plane of the face. And similar to that, I'm gonna curve this temple region up. Again, just separating the side from the front. Separating the side from the front plane is a little bit more important in this case because this is a 3/4 view. But after this point, I'm gonna take that brow line and use it as a reference to find the bottom of the nose. Again, halfway between the eyebrow and the chin is gonna be the bottom of the nose. So taking the same distance, I'm gonna come up here, and that's gonna give me the hairline. And her forehead is shaped a little bit differently, so we're gonna get a bit more of a rounded kind of forehead right there. Now, because my lines are a bit rough, I don't wanna keep working on the same piece, so I'm gonna just turn the opacity down and add a new layer, and I'm gonna work on top of this. So now we have some basic measurements, we can start adding in the facial features, right? So look for the positioning of the eyebrow, refer to the center line to make sure that your facial features are relatively symmetrical. Okay, and it's gonna curve down at the transitioning point between the side and the front of the face. And the outside of the brows is gonna kind of curve down a bit because we are viewing from a 3/4 angle. You're gonna see a bit more of that bump on the cheek right there. I think we can go and bring the eyes out. Once again, following the eye line and making sure that the eyes don't venture onto the side planes of the face. And also making sure that the distance between the eyes looks to be about the length of one single eye. It's right there, and then you can add, the fold on the eyelid, some of the eyelashes, a little bit more of the details. And we're gonna keep moving down, so we're gonna get onto the nose, this ridge that comes down, that leads into this wedge shape that ends in a triangle. And there's gonna be a nostril right there, again, marking down this wedge shape. And then you can draw the eye line back to the ear and find the point where the ear is gonna start. The bottom lobe of the ear is going to connect to the jawline. So, and I think honestly, I've made the chin maybe a little bit big. So that's something that I can correct right now in this stage where we're gonna go into a little bit more refinement. Now I'm gonna just work on the silhouette of the character. Work out the details a bit, and then I'm gonna follow this hairline and add in the volume of the hair. You can't really see the top of her head, but I'm just gonna assume that it looks something like that. I don't know. Add in the hairline here, right? Again, following that top measurement that we've built out. You can add in a little bit more detail in the ears. But anyways, if I turn off the original layer, you can see the sketch now starts to function on its own, and this is really good to see. So I'm gonna just start adding in a little bit of shading, a little bit of rendering to show you guys how this is done, okay? And shading is really a way for you to add volume to something that is normally two-dimensional. So I'm gonna just come here to this section under the eyebrows. This usually is a plane that faces downwards, okay? There's a little bit more of that underneath the eyelids here too, and just gonna add that in a little bit under the nose, add the shadow in there, and of course the top lip is gonna be facing downwards while the bottom lip is gonna have a section here underneath it that's facing downwards. And let's add a bit of shading here, a little bit of shading right there. And you could shade the hair if you want, just to add a bit more separation, a little bit more volume. And there we go. There's a portrait in a 3/4 view following all the anatomical cues that we've been talking about. So now let's move on to a profile view. This is one of my favorites to draw because it's very easy. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that oval shape for the top of the head. And as we've done before, we're gonna find the center line. And in this case, it's gonna be very, very close to the front of the head. So we're just gonna track that down to the point of the chin, and finding that center point on the profile view right there, that is going to give us the starting point of the jaw. Connect that down to the chin, and we have the basic shape for the head. I think I've made the back a little bit small, so I'm just gonna make that a little bit larger right there. So feel free to correct as you go. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, and halfway between these 2 points is where my eye line is gonna be, and it kind of tilts downwards so I know that the head is angled. Now because this guy is kind of squinting and he looks kind of angry, I'm gonna place the brow line very close to the eye line. Since we have the eye line, we can draw the curve down to the outer point of the chin and draw another curve to separate the forehead and the side of the face. There we go. He looks like a really cool robot right now, but with the shapes down, we could get into the more fine measurements. So again, I don't think I want to work on this rough sketch, so I'm going to turn the opacity down and add a layer on top. And here is where I can start to add in some of the facial features. So following the front of the face, that's going to be where the eyebrow is, right there, following the brow ridge on the brow line. The eye will be right under that on the eye line. It's like a triangular shape in this scenario. And the other eye will be on the other side, but it is going to be blocked by the nose ridge because he has a relatively high nose ridge right there, which notice how it connects to the inside of the eyebrow. You always want to take note of that. And then it comes down into the point of the nose. So from the brow line down to the chin, the halfway point is where the nose is going to end. So right about there, that's going to be the end point of the nose. Get that point in there, get the nostril in there. And as you come down here, the opening of the mouth is gonna be right above the midway point. What's interesting about the profile view of the face is the silhouette kind of comes out, down, out, and then down again. It's like a zigzag pattern that it follows down to the chin. So it's really satisfying to draw when you get it right. And there you go, there's pretty much the front of the face. And we can start to follow this eye line back, and that is where the ear is going to start. Okay, so there's our character pretty much fleshed out based on these main anatomical measurements. And at this point, we can start doing the fun stuff. We can start to refine it a little bit. So let's add the volume of the hair. He has very short hair, so it's not going to add too much, but just a little bit. And let's find the hairline right there. And just like that, once again, if you want, you could do a little bit of rendering. So let's take a darker color. Let's add a shadow under the brow just to separate the plane that's facing down from the plane that's facing up. Shadow under the nose, shadow under the lips, and under the bottom lip right there. And we can add a bit of shadow to the side plane of the face just to really bring out the cheeks here. And you can kind of follow the structure of the face. You can tell he's kind of clenching his jaw. So shadows are going to look something like that. And there's going to be a darker application of shadow right underneath the jaw, just like that. Bit of shadow in the ears, and let's color in his hair. All right, cool. So now we have a profile portrait. So the thing with these portraits is obviously they're not super refined because I'm not trying to make you guys sit through like 4 hours of rendering. But what you can tell is even though they're not one-to-one with the reference, they're all completely anatomically correct because we followed the basic anatomical measurements for the understructure of the head. So this one I think I'm really happy with. and this one as well, you get a really nice 3/4 view, and this one down here, a beautiful front view. And this is all the result of using the foundational shapes of the head, adhering to the structure of the head, and making sure that you're following all the right measurements on the head. You definitely don't need to know all the names of the different muscles, the different components on the face, the bones, and how they all come together. You don't necessarily need all that. You don't need to be a doctor to be able to capture these shapes and these measurements accurately. And if you guys want to go and try to practice this on your own, I highly recommend you do a lot of these sketches. They can be very rough. You don't have to render every single one of them, but just do a lot of these sketches, get that repetition in there so that you can really get the shape down in your head, okay? So that when you're approaching future paintings or character designs, whatever you might be doing, you're a lot more confident with the structure that you're drawing. So get yourself a blank sheet of paper and just repeat these steps, just get that repetition in there, just make sure that you're following all the right measurements, getting things down. They can be super rough. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect, but just get that repetition in there so that this becomes like second nature to you. All right, so there's some super quick, super fun 1-minute sketches for you guys using the same concept, completely from imagination. Again, once you guys practice these shapes, these measurements, and get really familiar with them, this is gonna be able to help you in all aspects of your drawing. So go out there, find some references, do some practice on your own, and show us in the Discord. I would love to see it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I had a lot of fun making it. And thank you guys once again so much for your support and for your patience this month, because this tutorial did come out a little bit later than I would have liked, but you guys have been amazing, super nice about it. So thank you guys so much for that. And I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Can't wait to see the characters that you guys are going to come up with using this method. Okay, so with that being said, I'll see you guys on the next tutorial.